The desert woke slowly under a pale morning sun. Wind moved across the open land like a quiet prayer. A lone rancher rode his horse along the fence line, checking posts, checking water, checking life. He had lived this way for many years. Far from towns, far from noise, far from people. Out here silence spoke louder than words. The rancher believed hard work was the only language the land understood. Every scar on his hands carried a lesson. Every sunrise reminded him that survival was earned, not given. He had buried grief deep inside himself years ago when loss taught him how fragile strength could be. That morning something felt different. The horse slowed its pace, ears turning toward a distant sound. A weak cry carried by the wind. Not loud, not clear, but desperate. The rancher stopped listening with his heart more than his ears. He followed the sound beyond a dry creek bed. There beneath the burning sky lay a woman, injured, exhausted, barely conscious. She was an adult traveler caught between harsh fate and unforgiving land. Her clothes were torn by thorns, her skin pale with pain. When she saw him, she tried to move but failed. Fear flashed in her eyes. She raised her hand, shaking, and whispered for him to stay back. Her voice cracked as she begged him not to look between her legs like that. Pain had struck her body in a place she could not see herself. The rancher froze, not from fear, but from responsibility. He understood injury. He understood pain. And he understood that dignity mattered even in moments of survival. He dismounted slowly, keeping his movements calm. He told her he meant no harm, that he was there to help. That out here help was rare but real. She tried to cover herself, but her strength failed again. The sun burned hotter. Time slipped away with every shallow breath she took. The rancher knew he had to act. Not as a man, not as a stranger, but as a guardian of life. He explained gently that he needed to check her injuries, that ignoring them could cost her everything. Her eyes filled with tears, not of shame, but of fear. Fear of pain, fear of losing control, fear of trusting someone she did not know. The rancher removed his hat, lowering his head. He promised respect. He promised care. He promised that saving her mattered more than his own discomfort. Slowly she nodded, barely visible but enough. He examined her injuries with steady hands and focused mind. This was not about looking. This was about seeing the truth of what needed healing. Blood lost swelling, and heat threatened her survival. The rancher tore clean cloth from his supplies. He worked carefully, stopping the bleeding, supporting her body, speaking softly to keep her conscious. Every word was a rope pulling her back from the edge. As he worked, memories rose within him, of a time when someone had not arrived in time, of a life lost because fear delayed action. He refused to let history repeat itself. The woman squeezed his hand, trust replacing fear, strength returning slowly. The desert watched in silence. The land that tested everyone now witnessed compassion stronger than isolation. When the work was done, he lifted her carefully onto his horse, walking beside them toward his ranch, toward shelter, water, and hope. This was only the beginning of a story where courage did not roar but whispered, where dignity survived pain, and where doing what must be done changed two lives forever. The journey to the ranch felt longer than any ride the rancher had taken before. Each step of the horse pressed urgency into his chest. The woman leaned weakly against the saddle, her breathing uneven, but steady enough to give him hope. The sun climbed higher. Heat wrapped the land like a heavy blanket. The rancher adjusted his pace, careful not to jolt her injuries. He spoke to her softly about simple things. The color of the sky, the way the land survived without mercy. His voice became a guide, keeping her awake, keeping her present. She told him her name, a simple name worn thin by hardship. She had been traveling alone, chasing work, chasing freedom, chasing a future she could call her own. The desert had not cared about her reasons. When they reached the ranch, the buildings appeared like a promise, weather withstanding firm against years of storms. The rancher guided the horse into the shade. He helped her down slowly, every movement deliberate. Inside the small house, the air was cooler. He laid her on a clean bed, prepared for moments exactly like this. Because out here survival meant readiness. He brought water, letting her sip slowly. Her hands trembled, but her eyes stayed on him. Trust now sat between them, fragile but real. He checked her injuries again, making sure the bleeding had stopped. The swelling worried him. He knew enough to understand this was not something time alone could heal. She whispered again, her earlier fear returning, asking him if she was safe, if he would still respect her once he had seen her at her weakest. The rancher answered without hesitation. He said strength was not about hiding wounds. It was about allowing someone to help carry the weight. Those words settled into her. Something inside her eased. Outside, the wind pressed against the walls. The land listened, always watching, always waiting. The rancher prepared a simple meal. Soup bred warmth. Food became medicine. Each swallow returned color to her face. As night approached, the temperature dropped sharply. He placed another blanket over her, checked the lantern, sat nearby, not sleeping, not leaving. Memories came back again, of a woman long ago who had needed help, of pride that had stopped him from asking others, of regret that had lived with him ever since. This time he would stay. This time he would not turn away. The woman woke suddenly from a restless sleep, pain spiking, fear rising. She reached out and found his hand already there. He told her she was not alone. That morning would come, that they would figure out the next steps together. She cried then, not loudly, but with quiet release, tears falling because someone had finally chosen to stay. Hours passed slowly. The rancher monitored her condition through the night, cooling her fever, keeping infection at bay. Just before dawn, she spoke again, saying she had been ashamed to ask for help, ashamed of her body, her pain, her fear. The rancher told her shame had no place in survival, that the land did not judge broken bones or bleeding skin. It only demanded action. When light returned to the sky, she looked stronger, still injured, still vulnerable, but alive. The rancher made a decision. He would take her to town, find a doctor, face roads he avoided, because doing the right thing often meant leaving comfort behind. As the sun rose over the horizon, two lives stood changed, one learning to trust, the other learning that compassion was not weakness. This was no longer just rescue. It was responsibility. Morning stretched slowly across the land. Light spilled to the window, touching the walls like quiet reassurance. The woman woke to the sound of boots moving gently across the floor. The rancher was already preparing for the journey ahead. He'd packed supplies with care. Water, bandages, clean cloth, food. Every item chosen with purpose. Out here, mistakes were paid for dearly. She tried to sit up, but pain reminded her of her limits. The rancher stopped her with a calm gesture, telling her strength also meant patience. Today would demand enough courage from both of them. He helped her onto the wagon, patting the seat to ease her injuries. The horse waited calmly, sensing the seriousness of the task. The rancher took one last look at his land, knowing it would be hours before he returned. The road to town was rough. Dust rose behind them like a trail of uncertainty. The woman held tightly to the side of the wagon, her face pale but determined. As miles passed, she began to talk, not because she had to, but because the silence felt safe enough now to fill. She spoke of growing up learning early that survival meant standing alone, depending on no one, trusting no one. The desert mirrored her life, harsh, beautiful, and unforgiving. The rancher listened without interruption. Listening was something the land had taught him well. Every word she spoke carried weight. She admitted she had almost given up before he arrived. That fear had whispered lies, telling her no one was coming. That help was a myth. The rancher told her help existed, but it often arrived quietly, unannounced, looking ordinary. The town appeared at last, small and weathered, but alive. People noticed them immediately, eyes turning, voices murmuring. The rancher ignored it all, his focus fixed on getting her care. At the clinic, he carried her inside, explaining the injury calmly, clearly. The doctor moved quickly, experience guiding steady hands. The rancher stepped back, giving space, trusting others to continue what he had started. Waiting was harder than acting. Time slowed. Every minute stretched thin. Old doubts crept in. What if he was too late? What if help had come just short? Finally, the doctor emerged, saying she would live, that intervention had saved her from serious damage. That timing had mattered. The rancher felt his breath return. A weight lifted he had not known he was carrying. When he saw her again, she smiled faintly, gratitude shining brighter than pain. She said his choice had changed everything. He shook his head, saying survival was a shared effort, that she had fought just as hard. She stayed at the clinic for days, healing, learning, resting. The rancher visited daily, bringing news from the ranch, stories of the land, small comforts. Their bond deepened not through words but presence. Two people shaped by hardship, choosing connection over distance. When she was strong enough to walk again, she stood outside the clinic, feeling the sun on her face. Alive because someone had acted when hesitation would have been easier. The rancher prepared to return home. But something inside him had shifted. The land would still be there, but now so would the memory of choosing compassion. This journey was no longer about rescue. It was about transformation for both of them. The days that followed carried a different weight. Healing moved slowly but steadily. Each morning the woman walked a little farther, each step proof that pain did not get the final word. The rancher noticed changes within himself. He no longer rushed away after visits. He lingered, listening, learning the rhythm of another life beside his own. They spoke about futures, not plans exactly, but possibilities, things neither had allowed themselves to imagine before. She told him how close she had come to believing she did not matter, how lying injured beneath the open sky had made her feel invisible, as if the world would keep turning whether she survived or not. The rancher understood that feeling too well. He shared how years of isolation had slowly convinced him that being alone was safer. That caring invited loss. That silence protected the heart. But the land had taught him another lesson as well. Nothing survives completely alone. Even the toughest roots rely on hidden water. When the doctor finally said she could leave, she looked afraid again. Not of pain this time, but of returning to uncertainty. The rancher offered without hesitation. She could stay at the ranch until she was ready. No expectations, no pressure, just space to recover fully. She accepted, not because she needed saving, but because she had learned the strength of accepting help. The ride back felt different. The land looked less threatening, more honest, as if it approved of the choice they were making. At the ranch, she found quiet, real quiet, the kind that heals instead of isolates. She helped where she could, cooking small meals, mending cloth, learning the rhythms of ranch life. The rancher watched her regain confidence, noticing how pain slowly transformed into resilience. He respected her independence, never hovering, never controlling. Trust grew naturally, built from consistency, not promises. One evening as the sun sank low, she asked him why he had helped her, why he had crossed a line of discomfort and fear. He answered simply, because doing nothing would have haunted him more. Those words stayed with her, echoing in moments of doubt. The land changed with the season, grass returning, life pushing forward, and so did they. Two paths once separate now running side by side, not because they needed each other to survive, but because they chose to walk forward together. This was not a story of rescue anymore. It was a story of renewal. Time passed in a quiet, steady way. Days blended into weeks. Healing became less about wounds and more about rebuilding trust in life. The woman grew stronger each morning, her steps no longer cautious, her laughter returning in small, unexpected moments. She worked beside the rancher when she could, learning the land, learning herself. The rancher noticed how her presence changed the ranch, not in loud ways, but in subtle ones. Meals felt warmer. Silence felt shared instead of empty. They spoke less about pain now, more about lessons, about how close both had come to living half-lives, one running endlessly, the other standing still. One afternoon a storm rolled in suddenly, wind bending the grass, thunder breaking the sky open. They worked together securing the animals, trusting each other without question. When the rain finally fell, they stood under the shelter, watching the land drink deeply. The woman said storms used to scare her. Now they felt cleansing. The rancher smiled, saying storms revealed what was strong enough to stay standing. That night by lantern light, she told him she planned to leave soon, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to continue her journey. The rancher felt the weight of those words. Not loss, but respect. He had never wanted to cage anything living. He told her she should go when she was ready, that the land would always remember her footsteps, that so would he. She thanked him, not just for saving her life, but for reminding her she deserved care. The morning she packed, the sky was clear, the air calm, a perfect beginning. They stood together one last time. No grand promises, no dramatic farewell, just understanding. As she walked away, the rancher returned to his work, different now, more open, more alive. Both carried forward what the desert had taught them, that compassion could exist even in the harshest places, that dignity survived pain, that courage sometimes meant doing what felt uncomfortable. This chapter closed quietly, but its impact remained. The ranch returned to its steady breathing. Morning chores, evening rest, wide sky above. Yet the man who walked the land was no longer the same. He carried himself with a quieter strength, not hardened by solitude, but shaped by connection. Every task felt purposeful. Every sunrise felt earned. The memory of that day in the desert stayed with him, not as fear, but as clarity. He understood now that courage was not loud. It arrived in calm choices, in moments when action mattered more than comfort. Far away the woman continued forward, her body healed, her spirit steady. She faced new roads with confidence she once thought impossible. She remembered the ranch not as a place of rescue, but as proof that respect could exist even in vulnerability. That dignity did not disappear in moments of need. Seasons shifted, grass rose, then faded again. Life moved as it always had. One afternoon, the rancher found himself helping a stranger whose wagon had broken down. He offered watershade time. No hesitation, no second thoughts. He smiled to himself, understanding the lesson had taken root. That night beneath the stars, he felt at peace. The land still vast, still demanding, but no longer empty. The desert had taught him its final truth. Survival meant more than endurance. It meant choosing compassion when the moment called. And somewhere beyond the horizon, two lives moved forward, changed forever. Not by chance, but by one brave decision made without turning away.